Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the ancient metal box buried deep in the rocky ground. His team had been digging for 3 days on the mining colony of New Haven, following scanner readings that showed something unusual beneath the old crash site. The box was bigger than they expected, almost the size of a small room, and covered in symbols that looked human but very old. "Commander, we need to see this," called Dr. Lisa Carter from inside the excavation. Pitt, she was the team's expert on old things, and her voice carried excitement mixed with worry. Jake climbed down the ladder to where Lisa and Lieutenant Ben Hayes were working carefully around the metal surface. The box had a door, or what looked like a door. Ben ran his scanner over it and shook his head. "The metal is some kind of alloy I've never seen before, but the energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's inside, it's still powered after all these years." Jake nodded and made the decision that would change everything. "Open it." The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a chamber filled with glowing blue lights. Inside were hundreds of small crystal devices, each one humming with energy. Lisa stepped forward carefully, her scanner beeping rapidly as she examined. "The crystals. These are data cores," she whispered. "Old ones. Really old. They're from a generation ship, but not like any I've studied before." She picked up one of the crystals, and it immediately projected a hologram into the air above them. The hologram showed a star map, but it was incomplete. Only part of the galaxy appeared, with strange symbols marking certain star systems. At the center of the map was a bright point labeled with symbols that none of them could read, but somehow felt familiar. Ben studied the symbols with his translation software. "I'm getting partial matches with old colonial databases. These symbols, they're ancient human writing, but from before the colonies were established, before the Great Exodus." Jake felt his heart skip a beat. The Great Exodus was the stuff of legends on New Haven. Stories told by the oldest families about how humanity had once lived on a single world called Earth, until alien invaders forced them to flee across the galaxy. Most people thought the stories were just that, stories. "Are you saying this map is from Earth?" Jake asked. Lisa was examining more of the data cores, each one showing different pieces of the same map. "Not from Earth," she said slowly. "This map shows the way to Earth. Look at this core." She activated another crystal, and new symbols appeared. This time, Ben's translator found more matches. "Origin point," he read. "Home. Return path. These coordinates ... He stopped and looked at the others with wide eyes. "These coordinates point to a specific location in space. A place that every colony ship was supposed to remember, but most forgot over the centuries." Jake picked up another data core and activated it. This one showed something different. Images of a blue and green world with white clouds and vast oceans. Cities covered parts of the land, and ships moved through space around the planet. Then the images changed, showing dark ships attacking, explosions in space, and people running to escape vessels. "The invasion," Lisa breathed. "This is actual footage of the Zephyrian attack on Earth. They spent hours going through the data. Cores finding pieces of history that had been lost for over 800 years. Maps, coordinates, messages, and most importantly, a complete record of where Earth was located in the galaxy. Jake made a decision that would affect millions of people. "Ben, I need you to send a coded transmission to every human colony in our database. Use the old emergency frequencies that all colonies are supposed to monitor." "What message, Commander?" "Tell them we found the path home." 3 days later, responses began arriving from across human space. At first just 1 or 2, then dozens, then hundreds. Colonies that New Haven didn't even know existed were responding to the message. Each colony had preserved fragments of the same information, pieces of the puzzle that had been scattered across the galaxy. during humanity's desperate flight from Earth. On the agricultural world of Greenfield, Captain Amy Rodriguez read the transmission with shaking hands. Her colony's archives contained star charts that matched perfectly with the coordinates from New Haven. She immediately began preparing her fastest ship for a journey to coordinate with other colonies. Dr. Peter Collins, working in the vast libraries of Scholar's Rest, found records that filled in gaps in the map. His world had preserved more historical data than any other colony, including detailed records of Earth's location and the routes taken by the original colony ships. As more colonies responded, a pattern emerged. Every human settlement, no matter how far apart or how long isolated, had preserved some piece of information about Earth. Some had star charts, others had coordinates, and a few had actual messages left by the original colonists with instructions. To find Earth again someday, Jake realized that this was bigger than anyone had imagined. For 800 years, humanity had been scattered across the galaxy, each colony thinking they were alone, or nearly alone. Now they discovered that humans had spread farther and grown more numerous than anyone had dreamed. But the most shocking discovery came when Dr. Collins sent his analysis of all the collected data. The coordinates from every colony pointed to the same location in space, but when they aimed their most powerful telescopes at that region, they found nothing. No stars, no planets, nothing but empty space. It's like Earth just disappeared, Ben said as he studied the telescope data. Lisa had been quiet for hours, running calculations on her computer. Finally, she looked up with a strange expression. What if it didn't disappear? What if it's hidden? Hidden how? Jake asked. The energy readings from this area of space are all wrong. There's definitely something there, but it's being masked somehow. The same technology that powers these data. Cores might be hiding Earth itself. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If Earth was hidden, who had hidden it, and why? The next few weeks brought more revelations as colonies across human space shared their preserved knowledge. Admiral Susan Blake, commanding the Defense Forces of the industrial world New Detroit, emerged as the leader of what people were starting to call the Homecoming Project. She began coordinating between colonies to plan an actual expedition to find Earth. Not everyone was excited about the discovery. Counselor William Price from the outer colony worlds argued that looking for Earth was dangerous and foolish. We've built new lives, he transmitted to the growing network of colonies. Why risk everything chasing ghosts from the past? But his voice was drowned out by the excitement spreading across human space. For the first time in centuries, humanity had a common goal that united all colonies. They were going to find Earth. Jake stood in the chamber with the data cores, now expanded into a full research facility. Teams from dozens of colonies were working together, sharing knowledge and resources in ways that hadn't happened since the original Exodus. The data cores continued to reveal new information daily, as if they had been designed to slowly release their secrets. Commander, Lisa called from her workstation. I think I know why the data cores activated when we found them. Jake walked over to where she was studying the newest discoveries. What did you find? These cores weren't just left here by accident. They were placed deliberately, programmed to activate when enough human colonies had developed the technology. To find them, there are probably similar caches hidden on worlds across human space, all waiting for us to be ready. Ready for what? Lisa looked at him with eyes full of wonder and fear. Ready to go home. Outside the research facility, ships from different colonies were arriving daily at New Haven. The scattered children of Earth were gathering, drawn by a call that had echoed across centuries. They had never forgotten their home, and now, finally, they had found the way back. Admiral Susan Blake stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching dozens of ships from different human colonies arrive at the meeting point near New Haven. In her 40 years of military service, she had never seen anything like this. Ships with designs she didn't recognize, carrying people who spoke with accents from worlds she had only heard about in old stories. The communication channels buzzed with activity as colony representatives tried to coordinate their efforts. Susan had taken charge of the situation because someone needed to, and her military background made her the natural choice. But managing this many different groups was like trying to herd cats in a thunderstorm. "Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the Outer Rim colonies," reported her communications officer. "They want to send their own expedition to Earth instead of joining ours." Susan sighed. 3 weeks had passed since Jake Morrison's discovery, and already the unity that had brought humanity together was starting to crack. Some colonies wanted to rush to Earth immediately. Others wanted to study the data cores for years before making any move. And a few were starting to have second thoughts about the whole project. "Put me through to all colony ships," Susan ordered. Her image appeared on screens across the growing fleet. "People of humanity," she began, "we stand at a moment that our ancestors could only dream of. For the first time in 800 years, we know where our home is. But if we let fear and politics divide us now, we'll lose this chance forever." On the mining ship from Greenfield, Captain Amy Rodriguez nodded in agreement. She had been one of the first to support the unified expedition, bringing her colony's agricultural expertise and their piece of the star chart puzzle. "The Admiral is right," she transmitted back. "We're stronger together than apart." But not everyone was convinced. Counselor William Price's voice cut through the chatter from his position with the outer colonies. "This is madness. We're talking about traveling to a part of space that shows up as empty on every scanner we have. What if it's a trap? What if the Zephyrians are still there, waiting for us to return?" Dr. Peter Collins, joining the debate from his research vessel, had been studying the historical records day and night. "The data suggests otherwise, Counselor. The Zephyrians were never interested in Earth itself. They wanted to eliminate humanity as a threat to their expansion. If Earth was truly destroyed, they would have moved on long ago." Susan watched the debate continue and made a command decision. "We're going to do this right. I'm authorizing the construction of a new class of ships specifically designed for this mission. Engineer Tony Martinez from New Detroit has already submitted preliminary designs." Tony Martinez appeared on screen, his workspace visible behind him, covered in blueprints and holographic ship models. "Thank you, Admiral. I call them Pathfinder-class cruisers. They're built for long-range exploration with heavy defensive capabilities and advanced sensor arrays. If we're going into unknown territory, we need ships that can handle anything." The next few months saw the largest cooperative effort in human history since the original Exodus. Colonies that had been isolated for centuries began sharing technology, resources, and expertise. The industrial worlds provided manufacturing capabilities. The agricultural colonies supplied food and life support systems. And the research colonies contributed their scientific knowledge. Dr. Rachel Stone, a quantum physicist from New Detroit, made the first major breakthrough in understanding what they were dealing with. She had been analyzing the sensor data from the region where Earth should be, and her findings changed everything. "The empty space isn't actually empty," she announced during a colony-wide conference call. "There's a massive energy field surrounding the entire solar system. It's like a cloaking device, but on a scale I've never imagined. Whatever is generating this field has enough power to hide an entire star system." Jake Morrison, now serving as the expedition's chief science officer, felt his stomach drop. "If something has that much power, what chance do we have against it?" "That's assuming it's hostile," Rachel replied. "The energy signature is consistent with human technology, just far more advanced than anything we've developed. It's possible that Earth is being protected, not imprisoned." This revelation sparked new debates across the colonies. Some saw it as proof that Earth had survived and was waiting for humanity's return. Others worried that whatever was protecting Earth might not welcome visitors, even human ones. Captain Dan Lewis volunteered to lead the first reconnaissance mission. His ship, the fastest scout vessel in the fleet, would attempt to penetrate the energy field and gather intelligence about what lay beyond. "I'm going with a minimal crew," Dan announced. "If this goes wrong, I don't want to risk more lives than necessary." Susan approved the mission, but with strict orders. "You get in, take readings, and get out. No heroics, no extended exploration. We need information, not casualties." Dan's ship, the CNS Falcon, departed 3 days later while the rest of the fleet continued preparing for the main expedition. The journey to Earth's coordinates would take 2 weeks at maximum speed. While Dan was traveling toward Earth, the colonies dealt with growing opposition to the project. Counselor William Price had gathered support from several outer colonies, arguing that the expedition was too dangerous and too expensive. "We're risking everything on a dream," Price broadcast to any colony that would listen. "These coordinates could lead us into a trap that destroys what's left of humanity. We should be building our strength where we are, not chasing ghosts from the past." His words found an audience among colonists who had lived their entire lives believing Earth was gone forever. Why risk their established homes for a world that might not even exist anymore? But for every colony that wavered, 2 more joined the expedition. The discovery of the data cores had awakened something deep in human nature, the need to return home, to complete the circle that had begun with their ancestors. Desperate flight across the galaxy. Amy Rodriguez found herself becoming one of the expedition's strongest supporters. "This isn't just about finding Earth," she told anyone who would listen. "It's about proving that humanity never gives up, that we honor the sacrifices our ancestors made to keep us alive." Dr. Lisa Carter continued studying the data cores, which seemed to reveal new information as the expedition grew larger. The cores appeared to be programmed to respond to the presence of multiple human colonies, releasing more detailed star charts and navigation data as more ships joined the fleet. "It's like they were designed to bring us together," Lisa explained to Jake during one of their research sessions. "The more colonies that participate, the more complete the information becomes." 2 weeks after Dan Lewis departed, his ship's emergency beacon activated. The signal was weak and broken, but it carried a message that changed everything. "Fleet. This is Falcon. Have reached. Coordinates. You're not going to believe. Earth is here. It's really here, but something's wrong. No life signs. It looks perfect, but completely empty. Something's protecting it. Massive automated systems. Trying to make contact, signal breaking up." The transmission cut off, leaving the assembled fleet in stunned silence. Earth existed, but it was empty. After 800 years, humanity's birth world was waiting for them, but something had cleared it of all life. Susan made the decision. That would define her career and possibly determine humanity's fate. "All ships, prepare for departure. We're going home." The largest fleet in human history began moving toward Earth, carrying the hopes and fears of scattered colonies across the galaxy. They had found their destination, but the mystery of what awaited them there had only deepened. As the ships entered hyperspace, heading toward coordinates that had been preserved in stories and dreams for 8 centuries. None of them knew they were about to encounter something that had been waiting patiently for their return, something that had been guarding Earth since the day humanity left. Admiral Susan Blake gripped the armrests of her command chair as the massive human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. The sight that greeted them made every person on every ship fall silent. There, hanging in space like a blue jewel, Was Earth exactly as it appeared in the old pictures from the data cores? "My God," whispered Commander Jake Morrison from his position at the science station. "It's really there." The planet looked perfect. White clouds swirled over blue oceans, and the familiar shapes of continents were clearly visible. But the space around Earth was wrong. Instead of the busy traffic of ships and stations that should surround a living world, there was only empty silence. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Ben Hayes from communications, "I'm not detecting any signals from Earth. No radio, no data transmissions, nothing. It's like the entire planet is dead." Dr. Rachel Stone worked frantically at her sensor station, running every scan she could think of. "The energy readings are incredible. There's a massive power source somewhere in the system, but I can't locate it. And the planetary scans show something impossible." "What do you mean impossible?" Susan asked. "Earth's surface shows signs of human civilization, but there are no life signs anywhere on the planet. The cities are intact, the forests are healthy, but nothing is alive down there." Captain Amy Rodriguez joined the conversation from her agricultural vessel. Could it be some kind of plague? Something that killed everything but left the planet itself undamaged? Before anyone could answer, alarms began sounding across the fleet. Something massive was approaching from the direction of Earth's moon. "Contact!" shouted the tactical officer. "Unknown vessel approaching." "It's huge, Admiral. Bigger than our entire fleet combined." On the main screen, a structure appeared that defied explanation. It looked like a combination of ship and space station, stretching for miles in every direction. Its surface was covered in lights and sensors, and it moved with purpose toward the human fleet. "All ships defensive positions," Susan ordered, "but do not fire unless fired upon." The massive structure stopped just outside weapons range and began transmitting. But instead of words or images, it sent complex mathematical sequences that appeared on every screen in the fleet. Dr. Lisa Carter, who had been studying ancient human languages for years, stared at the patterns in amazement. "It's trying to communicate, but not in any language I recognize. These are pure mathematical concepts." Captain Roy Adams, commanding the reconnaissance vessel CNS Falcon, had been studying the transmissions since his first encounter with the mysterious Guardian. "Admiral, I think I can establish communication. During my scout mission, I recorded similar patterns. If I respond with matching mathematical sequences, we might be able to build a conversation." "Do it," Susan ordered. Roy began transmitting mathematical responses to the structure's signals. Prime numbers, geometric formulas, and basic physics equations flowed back and forth between the human fleet and the Guardian. Slowly, the exchanges became more complex, and patterns began to emerge. Dr. Michelle Foster, the fleet's chief programmer, worked alongside Roy to decode the mathematical language. After hours of patient exchange, she made a breakthrough. "I think I understand what it's trying to tell us," Michelle announced. "It's not hostile. It's been waiting for us." The mathematical transmission suddenly changed, becoming more direct and easier to understand. Images began appearing alongside the numbers, showing Earth as it had been 800 years ago, then the arrival of the Zephyrian invasion fleet, and finally the desperate exodus of human colony ships. "It knows our history," Jake said in wonder. More images followed, showing the construction of the massive Guardian structure during humanity's final days on Earth. Humans working frantically to build something that could protect their homeworld until they could return. "We built it," Susan realized. "Our ancestors built that thing to guard Earth while we were gone." The Guardian began transmitting more detailed information, and Michelle worked to translate the mathematical concepts into words that everyone could understand. The story that emerged was both inspiring and heartbreaking. As the Zephyrian invasion overwhelmed Earth's defenses, a group of human scientists and engineers had worked in secret to create the ultimate Guardian system. They knew that humanity would have to flee, but they refused to let Earth fall into alien hands or be destroyed by neglect. The Guardian was designed to protect Earth using any means necessary. It could cloak the entire solar system, defend against hostile forces, and maintain the planet in perfect condition until humanity's return. But there was a price for this protection. The Guardian had to make a choice, Michel translated as. New mathematical sequences arrived. It could protect Earth's geography and cities, but it couldn't maintain natural life indefinitely without contamination and decay. So it preserved everything artificially. Jake felt his heart sink. You mean it killed everything on Earth to preserve it? Not exactly. Michel continued reading the Guardian's transmissions. It removed all organic life and placed it in stasis chambers hidden beneath the planet's surface. Every human, every animal, every plant that was left behind was carefully preserved, waiting for the day when humanity would return to restore natural life to Earth. The implications of this revelation spread through the fleet like wildfire. Earth wasn't dead. It was sleeping, maintained in perfect condition by a Guardian that had faithfully carried out its mission for over 8 centuries. Captain Dan Lewis, who had made the first contact with the Guardian during his scout mission, felt tears in his eyes. It's been alone all this time, keeping our world safe, waiting for us to come home. But the Guardian's transmissions weren't finished. New mathematical sequences warned of a problem that threatened everything. The Guardian's power systems were failing after 800 years of continuous operation. It had perhaps months, maybe a year at most, before it could no longer maintain Earth's artificial preservation. If the Guardian fails, Michel translated, Earth will begin to decay rapidly. All the preserved life will be lost, and the planet will become truly dead within a few years. Susan faced the most important decision of her career. The Guardian was offering humanity a choice. They could restore Earth to natural life, but doing so would require the Guardian to sacrifice itself. All its systems would be used to power the restoration process, and once that was done, Earth would be vulnerable again. There's more, Michel continued. The Guardian says it's not the only one. Similar Guardians were built to protect other important human worlds, but most of them failed centuries ago. Earth's Guardian is the last one still functioning. Counselor William Price, who had followed the main fleet despite his opposition to the mission, demanded to speak with the Guardian directly. His transmission was filled with anger and fear. You took our world from us, he broadcast toward the Guardian. You removed every living thing and turned Earth into a museum. What right did you have to make that choice? The Guardian's response was swift and clear. Through Michel's translation, it explained that it had followed its programming, exactly as designed by humanity's greatest minds. It had been given one mission, preserve Earth until humanity's return, and it had carried out that mission faithfully, despite the terrible loneliness of 8 centuries alone. Amy Rodriguez found herself speaking for many in the fleet when she transmitted her own message to the Guardian. Thank you for waiting for us. Thank you for keeping our home safe. The Guardian's response was almost human in its emotion, transmitted through mathematical sequences that somehow conveyed gratitude and hope. It had waited so long for those words, for the moment when humanity would return and understand the sacrifice that had been made. As the human fleet settled into orbit around Earth, plans began forming for the most important decision in their species history. They had found their home, but now they had to decide how to reclaim it and what price they were willing to pay for Earth's restoration. Commander Jake Morrison led the first landing party to Earth's surface, his heart pounding as their shuttle descended through the familiar blue atmosphere. The city below looked exactly like the pictures from old history books. Streets, buildings, parks all perfectly preserved but completely empty of life. Their shuttle landed in what had once been Central Park in the ancient city of New York. Jake stepped out onto grass that looked freshly cut, breathing air that smelled clean and pure. But the silence was overwhelming. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, no sounds of life anywhere. "It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time," said Dr. Emma Johnson, the expedition's chief medical officer, as she took readings of the air and soil. "Everything tests perfectly clean, but there's no biological activity at all." "Lieutenant." Ben Hayes set up communication equipment to maintain contact with the fleet in orbit. Admiral Blake, we're on the surface. The Guardian wasn't lying. "This place looks like everyone just vanished 5 minutes ago." Dr. Lisa Carter walked through the empty streets with her scanner, documenting everything they found. Tables in outdoor cafes still had dishes on them, as if people had been eating breakfast when something made them all disappear at once. Children's. Toys lay scattered in playgrounds, and cars sat parked along streets as if their owners had just stepped away. "Look at this," called Jake from inside a nearby building. The others joined him in what appeared to be a family home. Everything was perfectly clean and organized, but personal belongings were everywhere. Photos on walls showed smiling families, and clothes hung in closets as if waiting for their owners to return. Emma's medical scanner beeped as they explored the house. "I'm detecting traces of some kind of preservation field. It's very faint now, but it must have been much stronger when the Guardian first activated. That's how everything stayed so perfectly preserved." Ben received a transmission from the Guardian through his communication link. The mathematical sequences were becoming easier to understand as Dr. Michelle Foster and her team improved their fare. Translation methods. "The Guardian says the stasis chambers are located beneath major population centers," Ben reported. "It wants to show us one of the preservation facilities." Following the Guardian's directions, the landing party made their way to what looked like an ordinary subway entrance. But when they descended the stairs, they found something extraordinary. The tunnels had been converted into a massive underground complex filled with thousands of cylindrical chambers, each one glowing with soft blue light. Jake approached one of the chambers and peered through the transparent surface. Inside, suspended in some kind of energy field, was a person. A woman who looked to be in her 30s, wearing clothes from 800 years ago, floating peacefully as if she were simply sleeping. "There are millions of them," Emma whispered as she looked down the seemingly endless rows of chambers. "Every person who was on Earth when the Guardian activated. They're all here, waiting." The Guardian's voice reached them through the translation system that Michelle had established. It explained that when the Zephyrian invasion became unstoppable, the evacuation ships could only carry a fraction of Earth's population. Billions of people had been left behind with no way to escape. Rather than let them die in the invasion or suffer under alien occupation, the Guardian offered them a choice. Ben translated as the mathematical sequences continued. They could enter stasis and wait for humanity's return, no matter how long it took. Lisa ran her scanner over one of the stasis chambers. "The energy readings are incredible. These people are being kept in perfect suspended animation. They haven't aged a day in 800 years. But Emma's medical training made her notice something troubling. The power consumption for this many stasis chambers must be enormous. How has the Guardian maintained this for so long? The answer came through more transmissions from the Guardian. It had been slowly consuming itself to power the preservation systems. Parts of its massive structure had been converted to energy over the centuries, which was why it was now failing. It's been sacrificing itself piece by piece to keep Earth and its people alive. Jake realized. Back in orbit, Admiral Susan Blake faced an impossible decision. The Guardian had presented humanity with the ultimate choice. It could restore all the preserved life on Earth, bringing the planet back to natural living conditions. But doing so would require the Guardian to use every remaining bit of its power, essentially destroying itself in the process. Captain Amy Rodriguez argued for immediate restoration. These people have been waiting for 800 years. We can't let them stay in stasis any longer. But Counselor William Price, who had become even more vocal in his opposition, disagreed strongly. We're talking about destroying the most advanced artificial intelligence ever created. The Guardian has protected Earth for centuries. What if we need that protection again? Dr. Rachel Stone had been studying the Guardian's technical specifications and raised another concern. Once the Guardian sacrifices itself to restore Earth, the planet will be completely defenseless. If the Zephyrians or any other hostile force attacks, we'll have no way to protect our homeworld. The debate raged for days as the human fleet remained in orbit around Earth. Some colonies wanted to proceed with restoration immediately. Others wanted to find a way to preserve the Guardian while still awakening Earth's sleeping population. Dr. Peter Collins made a discovery that changed the nature of the debate. While studying the Guardian's historical records, he found evidence that similar Guardians had been built to protect other important human worlds during the original Exodus. There were dozens of them, Peter reported during a fleet-wide conference. Guardian systems protecting the most valuable human colonies and strategic locations. But according to these records, Earth's Guardian is the only one still functioning. Captain Dan Lewis, who had spent more time communicating with the Guardian than anyone else, brought forward the AI's own perspective on the situation. The Guardian says its mission was always temporary, Dan reported. It was built to preserve Earth until humanity could return and reclaim it. From its perspective, that mission is now complete. It's ready to fulfill its final purpose. But Jake Morrison, after spending days on Earth's surface among the stasis chambers, had developed a personal connection to the Guardian's sacrifice. This AI has been alone for 8 centuries, keeping our people alive and our world safe. The least we can do is find a way to save it. Engineer Tony Martinez had been working around the clock on potential solutions. What if we could transfer the Guardian's consciousness to our ship computers? We have quantum processing systems that might be able to house an artificial intelligence. The Guardian responded to this suggestion with what could only be described as surprise. Through its mathematical communications, it revealed that such a possibility had never been considered in its original programming. Dr. Michelle Foster worked with Tony to establish whether such a transfer was possible. The Guardian's consciousness is incredibly complex, but our quantum computers might be able to handle it if we network them together across multiple ships. As the debate continued, the Guardian made its own position clear. It had waited 800 years to complete its mission. Whether humanity chose to preserve it or let it sacrifice itself for Earth's restoration, it was ready to accept their decision. Emma Johnson's medical analysis of the stasis chambers revealed another time pressure. The preservation systems are starting to show strain. Some of the older chambers are beginning to fail. If we don't make a decision soon, we could lose people who have been waiting for centuries to come home. Susan Blake realized that the decision could not be delayed any longer. The fate of Earth, its sleeping population, and the Guardian that had protected them all rested in humanity's hands. The scattered children of Earth had to choose between honoring their faithful protector and reclaiming their birthright. The weight of 800 years of waiting pressed down on every person in the fleet as they prepared to make the most important decision in human history. Dr. Peter Collins sat in his research chamber surrounded by thousands of data files, his eyes red from days of searching through the Guardian's ancient records. He had been looking for any clue that might help save both Earth and its protector. And finally, buried deep in the original construction files, he found something that changed everything. Admiral Blake, he called through the communication system, his voice shaking with excitement. I found it. I found the answer. Susan Blake rushed to Peter's research vessel, along with Jake Morrison, Tony Martinez, and Dr. Michelle Foster. The old historian's discovery would determine the fate of everything they had worked for. The Guardian's original creators knew this. They would come, Peter explained, showing them holographic records from 8 centuries ago. They built a hidden subroutine into the Guardian's core programming. When its primary mission was complete, it could transfer its consciousness into human-built quantum computers, while still using its remaining power to restore Earth. Tony Martinez studied the technical specifications with growing amazement. They designed it to survive its own sacrifice. The Guardian can live on in our computer networks while still fulfilling its final purpose. Michelle Foster began calculating the requirements immediately. We'll need to link quantum computers from at least 20 ships to handle the Guardian's full consciousness. It's incredibly complex, but it's possible. The news spread through the human fleet like wildfire. For the first time since arriving at Earth, there was hope that they could save everyone. The sleeping millions in the stasis chambers, their faithful guardian, and their homeworld itself. But the work would be incredibly difficult and dangerous. Engineer Tony Martinez coordinated teams from every colony to build the quantum network needed to house the Guardian's consciousness. Ships that had never worked together before suddenly found themselves sharing their most advanced technology. Captain Amy Rodriguez supervised the agricultural specialists who would help restore Earth's natural ecosystems once the preservation fields were shut down. We'll need to replant entire forests and restock the oceans, she explained to her teams. It's going to be the biggest restoration project in human history. Dr. Rachel Stone worked with the Guardian to understand exactly how the restoration process would work. The AI would gradually release the preserved life forms. First the plants and simple animals, then the more complex creatures, and finally the humans in the stasis chambers. It has to be done in stages, Rachel explained to the assembled fleet. Commanders, if we try to restore everything at once, the ecological systems will collapse. The Guardian has calculated a sequence that will take 6 months to complete. Commander Jake Morrison led another landing party to Earth's surface to prepare the first restoration sites. The empty cities would need to be ready to receive millions of people who had been asleep for 800 years. Imagine waking up to find that your entire world has changed, Jake said to his team as they prepared housing and medical facilities. These people are going to need a lot of help adjusting to what humanity has become. Dr. Emma Johnson organized medical teams from across the colonies to care for the awakening humans. We don't know what 8 centuries in stasis might have done to them physically or mentally. We need to be ready for anything. Meanwhile, the quantum computer network was taking shape. Ships from dozens of colonies contributed their most advanced systems, creating a processing network more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. The Guardian watched their progress with what could only be described as curiosity. It's never considered the possibility of existing in a different form, Dr. Michelle Foster reported after her latest communication session with the AI. The concept of consciousness transfer was beyond its original programming, but it's eager to experience what we call digital life. Captain Roy Adams coordinated the final preparations from his position near the Guardian's massive structure. The AI had begun preparing itself for the transfer, organizing its consciousness into patterns that could survive the transition to human quantum computers. The Guardian says it's not afraid, Roy reported. If anything, it seems excited about the possibility of working directly with humanity instead of just protecting us from a distance. But not everyone in the fleet was happy with the decision. Counselor William Price continued to argue against the restoration process, claiming it was still too dangerous and unpredictable. We're gambling with the lives of millions of people. Price broadcast to any ships that would listen. What if something goes wrong during the transfer? What if the Guardian's consciousness is damaged or destroyed? His concerns found some support among the outer colonies, but the majority of humanity stood united behind the restoration project. Captain Dan Lewis spoke for many when he responded to Price's objections. The Guardian has protected our people for 800 years. If it's willing to take this risk to complete its mission, then we owe it our trust and support. The transfer process began 3 weeks after Peter Collins' discovery. The Guardian slowly copied its consciousness into the quantum network while simultaneously beginning Earth's restoration. It was like watching someone perform the most delicate surgery while also conducting a symphony. Plants began growing in the preserved forests. Rivers started flowing again. The artificial atmosphere gave way to natural air currents and weather patterns. And deep beneath the surface, the first stasis chambers began their awakening cycles. Tony Martinez monitored the quantum network as the Guardian's consciousness transferred piece by piece into their computers. "It's working," he reported with relief. "The Guardian is successfully moving into our systems while maintaining control of the restoration process." The first humans to wake up were the medical and emergency personnel who had volunteered to enter stasis last, knowing they would be needed first when humanity returned. Dr. Emma Johnson was there to greet them as they emerged from chambers that had kept them safe for 8 centuries. "Welcome home," she said to a confused doctor who had gone to sleep when horse-drawn carriages still existed on some colony worlds. "You've been asleep for a very long time, but Earth is alive again." Over the following months, the restoration continued exactly as the Guardian had planned. Ecosystems rebuilt themselves with careful precision. Animals returned to forests and oceans. And millions of humans slowly awakened to find their world transformed, but still recognizably home. The Guardian, now existing as a digital consciousness, distributed across the quantum network, experienced wonder at its new form of existence. It could communicate directly with humans, learning about the colonies they had built and the lives they had lived during its long vigil. "I never understood loneliness until now," the Guardian communicated through the network. "Being able to talk with all of you, to share thoughts and experiences. This is something I never imagined during my centuries of isolation." Admiral Susan Blake became Earth's first governor in over 8 centuries, overseeing the planet's transition from preserved museum to living world. Representatives from every colony established the new Earth Council, ensuring that all of humanity would have a voice in their homeworlds. Future Captain Dan Lewis was elected as the Council's first chairman, fulfilling a dream that had seemed impossible just months before. "We came home not just to reclaim our past," he said at the Council's first meeting, "but to build our future together." As Earth's restoration neared completion, the Guardian made one final revelation. Deep in its archives, it had discovered evidence that other species throughout the galaxy had faced similar exoduses and homecomings. Humanity's story was part of a larger pattern of loss and rediscovery that spanned the entire galaxy. "We are not alone in this experience," the Guardian shared with the assembled human leaders. "Other civilizations have made this same journey, and some have succeeded in reclaiming their lost homeworlds. Perhaps one day we can help them as you have helped me." Commander Jake Morrison stood on Earth's surface 6 months after the restoration. Began watching children from various colonies play together under a natural sun for the first time in their lives. The Guardian's consciousness touched his mind through the quantum network, sharing in the moment of pure joy. Earth was lost for ages, Jake said aloud, knowing the Guardian could hear him. But humanity never forgot, and now neither will the galaxy.